Good morning, you peasants in Narnia. 'Tis I, Queen Cummins of Narnia. This hat is so tight. It's like for a toddler. My circulation is being cut up, so I better read fast. Welcome. First of all, long live the Queen, the real Queen of Narnia. Um, we're in the final chapter of Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. You gotta love my Rapunzel wand. And we are going to find out what happens. So we think, Aslan was battling it out with the witch, so we don't know what happened there. The good team, the good side showed up just at the right time. And so hopefully we'll see what happens there. And then we'll see how things end. This might be a little hint of what's to come. Also, reminder, I think it goes to your guys' school email as well, but for sure your parents. Sent out an email this morning outlining everything going on today and tomorrow. For today, for both classes, right after you finish this reading, you should go take your Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe forms test, multiple choice, just like always. The link is in the email that I sent this morning. So go ahead and do that right after this. It's only open until 5 o'clock today, so make sure you take it today. My class, Flipgrid, is due tomorrow. Congratulations to Levi, Aaron, Aya, and Karen, who've already submitted their Flipgrids, which are super cool. I love it. Make sure you get that submitted by tomorrow. I will be using this as part of your public speaking portion on your report card. So just have fun, right? And looking forward to seeing what you all are teaching me. So far, everything you've taught me, I had no clue about. So I'm a little bit smarter thanks to those 4 people I just mentioned. Again, Flipgrid is just for my class. Tomorrow, there will be no live reading because we'll be done with the book, obviously. And the best ever end of year Kahoot, crazy questions, anything can happen, may have to do somewhat with academics, and it might just be fun questions. You just don't know. So you don't want to miss that at 1 tomorrow. Make sure you plan to take your social studies test, which is also in the link in the email that I sent this morning. The link is in the email that I sent. So make sure you take your test either well before 1 o'clock or after our Kahoot so you don't miss the final one because it's a good one. Some fun questions I came up with. And then after you submit your social studies test, that's your last test of the year. You are donezo. My class, don't forget to have your parents sign up for a time slot for coming to drop off your items on Tuesday. I'll be there from 8:30 to 10:30. You may come with your parent if you'd like to drop off stuff. I'd love to see you. But remember, kids have to come with a parent. You can't just come on your own. And I don't think your parents would just send you down there on your own anyway. All right, that's it. Let's read. Okay, chapter 17. Oh my gosh, this hat is so tight. I can't even think straight. The things I do for you, for my kingdom. Glasses, extremely importante. All right, here we go, people. The hunting of the white stag. And I believe a white stag is either a white deer, a white horse, something along those lines. Stag. Can't remember. I think it's a deer. All right. The battle was all over a few minutes after their arrival. Most of the enemy had been killed in the first charge of Aslan and his companions. And when those who were still living saw that the witch was dead, and they either gave themselves up or took to flight, the next thing that Lucy knew was that Peter and Aslan were shaking hands. It was strange to her to see Peter looking as he looked now. His face was so pale and stern, and he seemed so much older. It was all Edmund's doing, Aslan, Peter was saying. We would have been beaten if it hadn't been for him. The witch was turning our troops into stone right and left, but nothing would stop him. He fought his way through 3 ogres to where she was just turning one of your leopards into a statue. And when he reached her, he had the sense to bring his sword smashing down on her wand instead of trying to go for her directly and simply getting made a statue himself for his pains. Well, that was the mistake all the rest were making. And once her wand was broken, we began to have some chance, if we hadn't lost so many already. He was terribly wounded. We must go and see him. They found Edmund in charge of Mrs. Beaver, a little way back from the fighting line. He was covered with blood. His mouth was open, and his face was a nasty green color. Quick, Lucy! Oh, sorry, it's Aslan. Quick, Lucy, said Aslan. And then, almost for the first time, Lucy remembered the precious cordial that had been given to her for her Christmas present. Her hands trembled so much that she could hardly undo the stopper, but she managed it in the end and poured a few drops into her brother's mouth. There are other people wounded, said Aslan, while she was still looking eagerly into Edmund's pale face and wondering if the cordial would have any result. Yes, I know, said Lucy crossly. Just wait a minute. Daughter of Eve, said Aslan in a graver voice, others are also at the point of death. Must more people die on account of Edmund? Oh, I'm sorry, Aslan, said Lucy, getting up and going to him. And for the next half hour they were busy, she attending to the wounded, while he restored those who had been turned into stone. When at last she was free to come back to Edmund, she found him standing on his feet and not only healed of his wounds, but looking better than she had seen him look for ages. In fact, ever since his first term at that horrid school, which was where he had begun to go wrong, he had become his old real self again and could look you in the face. And there on the field of battle, Aslan made him a knight. Does he know, whispered Lucy to Susan, what Aslan did for him? Does he know what the arrangement with the witch really was? Hush, no, of course he doesn't know, said Susan. Well, oughtn't he be told, said Lucy. Oh, surely not, said Susan. It would just be too awful for him. Think how you feel if you were he. So think about if somebody said, oh, by the way, Miss Cummins, so-and-so died for you and then came back. That's how much they care about you. I'd be like, oh, wow. I mean, how do you repay someone for dying for you? All the same, I think he ought to know, said Lucy. But at that moment, they were interrupted. That night, they slept where they were. How Aslan provided food for them all, I'm not really sure. But somehow or another, they found themselves all sitting down in the grass to a fine high tea at about 8 o'clock. The next day, they began marching eastward down the side of the great river. And the next day after that, at about tea time, they actually reached the mouth. The castle of Cair Paravel on its little hill towered up above them. Before them were the sands with rocks and little pools of salt water and seaweed and the smell of the sea and long miles of bluish-green waves breaking forever and ever on the beach. And oh, the cry of the seagulls. Have you heard it? Can you remember? That evening, after tea, the 4 children all managed to get down to the beach again and get their shoes and stockings off and feel the sand between their toes. But next day was more solemn, for then in the great hall of Cair Paravel, that wonderful hall with the ivory roof and the west wall hung with peacock feathers and the eastern door which looks towards the sea, in the presence of all their friends and to the sound of trumpets, Aslan solemnly crowned them and led them to the 4 thrones amid deafening shouts of, Long live King Peter! Long live Queen Susan! Long live King Edmund! Long live Queen Lucy! Once a king or queen in Narnia, always a king or queen. Bear it well, sons of Adam, bear it well, daughters of Eve, said Aslan. And through the eastern door, which was wide open, came the voices of the mermen and the mermaids swimming close to the shore and singing in honor of their new kings and queens. I can just picture them half out of the water. Oh! Or maybe they sound like Ariel. Oh! Right. So the children sat on their thrones. Oh no, what does Ariel sound like? Oh, I don't know. What is it? She loses her voice. I better just stop singing and start reading. So the children sat on their thrones, and scepters were put into their hands, and they gave rewards and honors to all their friends, to Tumnus the fawn, to the beavers, to giant Rumblebuffin, to the leopards, to the good centaurs, the good dwarfs, and to the lion. And that night there was a great feast in Cair Paravel, and revelry and dancing, and gold flashed and wine flowed, and answering to the music inside, but stranger, sweeter, and more piercing came the music of the sea people. But amid all these rejoicings, Aslan himself quietly slipped away. And when the kings and queens noticed that he wasn't there, they said something about it, for Mr. Beaver had warned them. He'll be coming and going, he said. One day you'll see him, and the next you won't. He doesn't like to be tied down, and of course he has other countries to attend to. It's quite all right. He'll often drop in, only you mustn't press him. He's wild, you know. He's not like a tame lion. And now, as you see, this story is nearly, but not quite, at an end. These 2 kings and 2 queens governed Narnia well, and long and happy was their reign. At first, much of their time was spent in seeking out the remnants of the White Witch's army and destroying them. And indeed, for a long time, there would be news of evil things lurking in the wilder parts of the forest, a haunting here, a killing there, a glimpse of a werewolf one month, and a rumor of a hag the next. But in the end, all that foul brood was stamped out, and they made good laws, and they kept the peace, and they saved good trees from being unnecessarily cut down, and liberated young dwarfs and young satyrs from being sent to school. And generally, they stopped busybodies and interferers and encouraged ordinary people who wanted to live and let live. And they drove back the fierce giants, quite a different sort from Giant Rumblebuffin, of course, on the north of Narnia, when these ventured across the frontier, and they entered into friendship and alliance with countries beyond the sea, and they paid them visits of state and received visits of state from them. And they themselves grew and they changed as the years passed over them. And Peter became a tall and deep-chested man and a great warrior, and he was called King Peter the Magnificent. And Susan, she grew into a tall and gracious woman with black hair that fell almost to her feet, and the kings of the countries beyond the sea began to send ambassadors asking for her hand in marriage, and she was called Susan the Gentle. Edmund was a graver and quieter man than Peter, and great in counsel and judgment. He was called King Edmund the Just, which I think is funny because here he started out making such bad choices, and now he's all about being fair. I like it. He changed. But as for Lucy, she was always gay and golden-haired, and all princes in those parts desired her to be their queen, and her own people called her Queen Lucy the Valiant. So they lived in great joy, as if ever they remembered their life in this world. It was only as one remembers a dream. And one year it fell out that Tumnus, who was a middle-aged fawn by now and beginning to be very stout, came downriver and brought them news that the white stag had once more appeared in their parts. The white stag who would give you wishes if you caught him. So kind of like catching a leprechaun. So these two kings and two queens, with their principal members of their court, rode a-hunting with horns and hounds in the western woods to follow the white stag. And they had not hunted long before they had a sight of him, and he led them a great pace over rough and smooth and through thick and thin, till the horses of all the courtiers were tired out, and only these four were still following. And they saw the stag enter into a thicket where their horses could not follow. Then said King Peter, for they talked in quite a different style now, having been kings and queens for so long. So the kids had very different voices. Fair consorts, let us now alight from our horses and follow these beasts into the thicket, for in all my days I have never hunted a nobler quarry. Sir, said the other children, even so let us do. So they alighted and tied their horses to trees, and they went on to the thick wood on foot. And as soon as they had entered it, Queen Susan said, Fair friends, here's a great marvel, for I seem to see a tree made of iron. Madame, said King Edmund, if you look well upon it, you shall see it is a pillar of iron, with a lantern set on top thereof. By the lion's mane, a strange device indeed, said King Peter, to set a lantern here where the trees cluster so thick about it and so high above it that if it were lit, it should give light to no man. Sir, said Queen Lucy, by likelihood, when this post and this lamp was set here, there were smaller trees in one place, or fewer, or perhaps even none. For this is a young wood, and the iron post is quite old. And they stood looking upon it. Then said King Edmund, I know not how it is, but this lamp on the post worketh upon me strangely. It runs in my mind that I've seen the likes before, as if it were in a dream, or maybe in the dream of a dream. Sir, answered they all, it is even so with us also. And more, said Queen Lucy, for it will not go out of my mind that if we pass this post and lantern, either we shall find strange adventures, or else some great change of our fortunes. Madame, said King Edmund, the like forebodeth stirreth in my heart also. And in mine, fair brother, said King Peter. And in mine too, said Queen Susan. Wherefore, by my counsel, we shall lightly return to our horses, and follow this stag no further. Madame, said King Peter, then I pray thee to have me excused, for never since we four were kings and queens in Narnia have we set our hands to any high matters, as battles, quests, feats of arms, acts of justice, and the like, and then given over. But always we have taken in hand the same, and we have achieved. Sister, said Queen Lucy, my royal brother speaks rightly, and it seems to me we should be shamed if for any fearing or foreboding we turn back from following so noble a beast as now we have in chase. And so say I, said King Edmund, and I have such desire to find the signification of this thing that I would not by my good will turn back for the richest jewel in all of Narnia and all the islands. Then, in the name of Aslan, said Queen Susan, if ye will have it so, let us go on and take the adventure that shall fall upon us. So the kings and queens entered the thicket, and before they had gone a score of a couple of paces, they all remembered that the thing that they had seen was called a lamp post. And before they had gone 20 more paces, they noticed that they were making their way not through branches, but through coats. And the next moment, they all came tumbling out of a wardrobe door into the empty room. And they were no longer kings and queens in their hunting array, but just Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy in their old clothes. It was the same day, the same hour of the day on which they had all gone into the wardrobe to hide. Mrs. McGrady and the visitors were still talking in the passage, but luckily they never came into the empty room, and so the children were not caught. And that would have been the very end of the story if it hadn't been that they felt they really must explain to the professor why 4 of the coats out of his wardrobe were missing. And the professor, who was a very remarkable man, didn't tell them not to be silly or not to tell lies, but believed their whole story. No, he said, I don't think it will be any good trying to go back through the wardrobe door to go get the coats. You won't get into Narnia again by that route. Nor would the coats be much use by now if you did. What's that? Yes, of course you'll get back to Narnia again someday. Once a king in Narnia, always a king in Narnia. But don't go trying to use the same route twice. Indeed, don't even try to get there at all. It'll happen when you're not looking for it, and don't talk too much about it, even among yourselves. And don't mention it to anyone else unless you find that they've had adventures of the same sort themselves. What's that? How will you know? Oh, you'll know all right. Odd things, they say. Even their looks will let the secret out. Keep your eyes open. Bless me, what do they teach them at these schools these days? And that is the very end of the adventure of the wardrobe. But if the professor was right, it was only the beginning of the adventures in Narnia. Ah! So we come to an end, and Professor continues to be extremely mysterious. And he said, you'll know if people have been in Narnia and only talk to those people about it. Otherwise, I don't know what happens. But it's interesting how he knows quite a bit about Narnia, doesn't he? I guess there's 8 or 7 books in the series, and every summer I claim I'm going to start reading them. I never do because life happens. But if you love the series, I would strongly recommend that you go on to the next one, see what happens next. I would love to know. I have a strong guess that, first of all, I think Professor has definitely been in Narnia. And I wonder if the white stag, because remember, like, Professor has all that white crazy hair. I wonder if, like, he turns into the stag when he goes into Narnia, and he was the one who pulled them back into the house for some reason. I like this idea of living a full life in Narnia, and then you come back and you're right back to your normal age. I mean, you could just live forever, stay young, right? You kind of grow older in Narnia, but then you go back to being young again. It's really interesting. The wardrobe is very mysterious. Like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Does it have to be raining outside? We don't know. And then he said you won't get back into Narnia through that route. So is the wardrobe still available as a portal? Do you have to be looking for another portal? Is the portal in the professor's house? I have a lot of questions. So if you do indeed go ahead and read the next book, would you please email me this summer and tell me some highlights and what kind of happened to the children, Professor? I understand the first book, this is the second book, by the way, in the series. In the first book, the lantern, the whole reason why the lantern's in Narnia, I guess there's a whole big story of how the lantern got there. One of my students did tell me that. So if you're interested in going backwards a book and then moving forward, we'll find out the significance of the lantern. All right, boys and girls, I'm going to encourage you right this very moment, while the information is all fresh in your mind, to go to your forms. Again, I sent an email this morning to all the email links on Aries. You may or may not have gotten it to your own email, so you can check your own email first. If it's not there, then ask your parents so that you can go to the link. I think it's 20 questions, multiple choice, and you'll have your score right when you push submit. My class, hop on that Flipgrid. I want to see your Flipgrids. I'm making comments on all of them, and I encourage you guys to watch your classmates' presentations and push like, love, whatever it is on there. I noticed, Mr. Aaron, you already have like 65 views. So exciting. That's the good part of going near the beginning, is you get a lot more views, which is exciting. So a little bit of motivation to get your Flipgrid on there. What else? And tomorrow, Chapter 8 Social Studies test, anytime between the hours of 9 and 5. Again, the link is in the email I sent today. Try to make it easy and put everything in one email so your parents don't have to look everywhere. And 1 o'clock tomorrow, final both class Kahoot, who will make it on the leaderboard. Adieu from the Queen of Narnia, Miss Cummins. I now may take off my hat and breathe again. Ta-ta. I cracked myself up.